All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Ashley Rumschlag, the VP of Digital Services at Teresa's Fund and domesticshelters.org. I'm joined today by Rachel Myers, our Digital Services Specialist, and Hannah Craig, our Senior Content Strategist and Creator, who will be available in the chat throughout the presentation. Just a few housekeeping items before I turn things over to our today's presenters. First, we do have live closed captionings available for this webinar. If you're not seeing them, you can enable them by clicking the More button and select Show Subtitle. A transcript will also be provided within a week of the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, all attendees are in listen-only mode and your video is turned off. If you have any questions for the presenter, we ask you to please place those in the Q&A box. The chat box can be used to communicate between attendees and panelists, maybe alert us if there's anything wrong with the webinar. Certificate of attendance, transcript, and a recording of the webinar, and any additional resources will be emailed to all in attendance today within a week of the presentation. If you're a call-in listener, just send me an email at info@domesticshelters.org or ashley@domesticshelters.org, and we'll make sure that you're on that email distribution list. Hopefully everyone's familiar with domesticshelters.org, but if not, just a quick reminder of who we are. We are the fastest growing online resource for domestic violence information. We help over 2 million people each year find the answers that they need about domestic violence. The searchable database is one of the main tools that we offer as well. It offers information about over 2,800 domestic violence programs in the US and Canada. A reminder for our domestic violence service providers, we encourage you to check out that database on our website and make sure that your information is up to date. And a reminder for our US shelters, you do have the opportunity to set up a free wish list on domesticshelters.org. That allows people from anywhere in the world to ship wish list items directly to you. And don't forget about our domestic violence advocates community on Facebook. Rachel will drop a link to that in the chat box. And our Purple Ribbon Awards celebration is coming up. All the winners were announced back in July, and we're going to celebrate winners as well as announce who of the winners will receive a portion of the $30,000 in grants. So we have a lot of giveaways and prizes that will be given away throughout the presentation, as well as obviously recognizing the winners, and our special guest host, Angela Shelton, is sure to make it just a really fun time. So we hope everyone will join us for that. And again, we'll drop a link to registration in the chat box. Finally, if you have questions, feel free to email us at info@domesticshelters.org. We would love to hear from you. Okay. So today is a little different. So if you've joined us for a webinar before, we typically have a presenter and they kind of go through their slides. Today, we're fortunate to have multiple presenters. So during the first portion, you're going to get a chance to hear from a seasoned 911 telecommunicator, Heather Joyner, and learn about her day-to-day work life. She'll also provide a behind-the-scenes look at what happens at a dispatch center. So please be sure to add your questions in the Q&A. She's really looking forward to receiving those and answering questions. And next, you'll get a chance to, you'll be introduced to a free technology that's revolutionizing the way that victims and abuse can connect with dispatchers and get help. So Melissa Faith Hart, the founder and CEO of E-Bodyguard, is going to explain how the technology works, how it can help those that you serve. So to start, please welcome Heather Vaughn Joyner. She is the Assistant Director with Franklin County Emergency Communications, located in Lewisburg, North Carolina. Welcome, Heather. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity that domesticshelters.org and eBodyGuard has given to me to be able to share a little glimpse inside the operations of a 911 call center. Okay, so this is Public Safety Telecommunications, a glimpse inside 911. And before I start my presentation with this, I just want to ensure your awareness that what I'm going to share with you today is just a glimpse inside a 911 center located in North Carolina. Across the country, even internationally, there are many 911 centers that are providing you with service for assistance in those times where you may need support and help with police, fire, medical. Not all of our 911 centers are identical in setup or models and software or accessibilities to things. So I do have links that are shared in the chat that I think Rachel and Ashley will be kind of sharing with you as well. If you want to see what is more capable and what is available in your areas, you can reach out to your local 911 centers and verify what they can and cannot do based on this presentation and what I'm going to share with you today. So I want to share with you just this image of an iceberg because I think this really kind of helps to start this conversation. A lot of times the public has a perception of what they think a 911 operations center is, and television has definitely aided in that for good and bad, simply because television is showing you glimpses of things, and not all crimes can be solved in an hour or 30 minutes. So it does take time and effort into all of our actions and reactions into our work. But it's a lot more in depth in 911 telecommunications. There is a lot of behind the scenes that the public just does not know or they're not aware of. And a lot of it may not even be public information due to the safeguards that we have to enact in our own PSAPs or public safety answering points. So again, it is a touch of a surface of what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to focus specifically on the call taking section side of 911 telecommunications, but just understand that there's a lot more dynamic underneath. 911 centers are often partners with their communities within the areas that they serve. Monica Kearney, the executive director of Safe Space here in Franklin County in Lewisburg, North Carolina, where I am, we have a good connection of communications, and we provide hosting and training within our communities. So a lot of PSAP managers would love to hear from you if you're not already in that partnership with them. For those of you who are serving in communities with shelters or safe havens or being advocates in those areas, they would love to hear from you. And so APCO and NINA are the two registries that are listed there for you to be able to connect with your local 911 telecommunicator centers if you're not already familiar with who those individuals are. So this is the inside image of what one call center can look like. Many 911 centers are set up different. Some in rural counties are a lot smaller than those in larger areas. I know here in Franklin County, we only have 6 workstations, whereas this image is showing you a lot more than 6. And in New York, they have about 150. In Massachusetts, they've got about 80. It's all across the country. There are different sized communication centers, but our performance in the work that we do is all the same, and how we receive calls, relay information, keep radio communications with our responders for police, fire, medical, and how we're here to support our community in anything and everything that is coming to the surface that we may have to deal with for public utilities and other state agencies as well. So this is one particular workstation that I would like to share with you. It gives the overview of one workstation for a telecommunicator for us to have the resources and the software and the technology for us to support our callers as well as our service agencies. So in this image here, facing image to the far left, you will see a radio consulate, which is a radio frequency of monitors that we have that we can communicate by radio with our police, medical, and our fire responders in the field. In the center monitors, where you see the 6, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, that is what our CAD, and CAD is computer aided dispatch, and it is a resource accountability tool for a telecommunicator to keep up with what calls are active, what officers are active, what departments are out serving, what is available to us, what our mutual aid is like across our county. In the event we had a natural disaster and we needed to call in mutual aid support, this is our resource of allocation for us to keep up and know what's going on in any particular county or environment across the country or specific to a county or state. So the 6 monitors there is not only her CAD workstation for keeping up with units in the field, it is also a network of databases for connection to the FBI, to the SBI, for connecting with licenses, vehicle registrations, to check for wants or domestic violence orders, protection orders, ex partes. It is a funnel of information that we get that is very sensitive in nature to the work that we do. And anytime there's a missing person, a wanted person, any be on the lookouts or attempt to locate, that mainframe is what we all use to connect on a national database so we can keep up and know our officers are safe when they're approaching certain environments. Then if you look at the bottom section, it's still resources of statewide warrant checks. They have GIS for geographical information systems for mapping, which is what wireless in phase 2, which I'll talk about that in just a moment. But it's a way for us to find you when you're not necessarily familiar with your surroundings. And when you're calling, we can get latitude and longitude on our maps to help us to locate you. So this is mainly what we consider to call a workstation or CAD workstation. And then the monitor to the far right is the telephone system, which is our #1 link to how we operate in general, because without the calls coming to us, we wouldn't have the data to send out to our field responders and for them to respond. So the telephone system is what I'm going to talk about the most today in the call taking process that will lead you into Melissa and the work that she's doing and eBodyGuard and the application that will be shared with you today. So if you have questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to put those in the chat. I'm a Southern girl. I love to talk. I love to engage with our audience and just to be able to answer questions or to at least direct you in the right path for connecting you to your local agency so you can start this conversation. So a 911 telecommunicator's basic roles and responsibilities are: we are receiving and processing incoming emergency and non-emergency calls for service across our respective areas. And in these calls, they are dealing with police, fire, and medical responses. We take the information from our callers as best we can, and we're dispatching units to those locations of incident locations of crimes occurring or community resource need. And we're maintaining those radio communications with our field units as they are en route to calls. So the iceberg that I shared with you, the underneath line of that is there's a lot of simultaneous things that are happening behind the scenes that a caller, when they're in their most critical, vulnerable, panicky state, may not realize is taking place. But you have a team of professionals who are behind the scenes that are working for you on your behalf to get you those resources that you're needing in that time that you're needing of those resources. We relay vital information by telephone, radio, and we also use our computers with CAD to CAD or mobile data terminals with our field units to relay sensitive information as we're processing through calls. We use state and federal computer softwares and programs to record, modify, and retrieve data, including the missing and wanted persons, stolen and recovered properties, driver's license, vehicle registrations, and of course, those ex partes and domestic violence protection orders that we spoke about earlier. We have files that we have to maintain. We have reports that we have to maintain, and we offer support to our service agencies and maintaining those records for clearing of these individuals once they are located. And then we're to ensure all responders are getting back home to their families safe, and we play a huge vital role in that by the information that we are able to obtain from you, from our callers. So the critical role of a 911 telecommunicator, again, I'm going to concentrate on the call taking process because this is the critical role that has to take place, is having a competent person on the phone with a person who is in need to be able to know what resources are available, how we're going to provide those resources, and what strategic approach for safety protocols are we going to put in place for our responders coming to you. For example, even with the pandemic that's going on right now across the country, different state protocols have been changed to safety net our responders as they're going to these calls for service in the medical, fire, and law enforcement role. So I want to share with you on the call taking side of it, there is a phased approach into 911. We have come so far from 1967 when the first 911 call was made in Alabama here in the USA to where we are today in 2021. So when 911 first came on the market to actually be a resource for sharing, it became a basic 911, meaning that if you had a phone jack in your wall or your business that had a landline telephone connected to it, you had a private kind of a direct link from calling 911 to get an operator. There was no technology in the middle of exchanging of information. It was one voice speaking to another voice. And if a caller wasn't able to give us information, we were clueless into knowing where we could provide any type of support or send help. So we advanced from a basic into an enhanced 911 center, which means you have your telephony company that has a database of a name and phone number database and addressing for providing to a 911 center. So in an enhanced 911 setting, when you're dialing 911 from those landline phones, it is providing us with the name of who the phone is registered to, the telephone number of that particular device, and also the physical address, not a post office box, not a rural route box, but it is an actual physical address to the location of where that phone is connected in that home or that business. That was what we called our enhanced, that provided us with Annie and Allie. Annie is a numeric identifier and Allie is the location identifier. So then we moved into, with our enhanced 911, into teletyping or voice carryovers for our hearing impaired community. And this is a way for us to be able to provide the same service to our hearing impaired community and be able to provide a communications method of doing that with our teletypewriters that were connected to our landline handset couplers that we use to type to those individuals that could not hear. Then we advanced into our cell phone category, where we went into a phase one approach. When you first purchased a cell phone, it was considered a phase one, meaning it did not give us your location. It only provided to a telecommunicator the address of the cell tower and the sector of that call where it was being received from. So if you were in an area and you could not tell us who you who or where you were, we would have no way of knowing. We would have no information to be able to provide you help in an immediate fashion. And so technology, again, advancing into what we consider a phase two 911 phone call with wireless, is where we started to receive latitude and longitude to be able to plot individuals on a map within our counties or respective areas. And we could see where you were calling from within like 100-yard radius, basically. And the longer we kept the line open, the longer we could rebid on the call, it would actually increase our efforts in finding you, and it would decrease the size that we would be looking as far as an area. And so phase two was a huge advancement in that respect. So when people could not speak, at least we were able to have a latitude and longitude to send resources to check a general area. Then we advanced up into internet calling, which is our voice over internet protocol. So if you have telephone connection with your internet provider or your cable company, not going through a traditional phone company, it's mainly your calls are coming in on an internet portal. And so there are pros and cons in this respect, because as long as you have a registered address, you're going to have a display of information that will show to a telecommunicator. However, if you do have information that is being utilized through the internet portal, you have to maintain your address. If you move from Texas to North Carolina, or if you move just across a different city in your county, if you're not updating the address, that stays static, meaning that it's always going to follow in that. So if you're calling 911 and your address is registered in Texas, but now you're in North Carolina, well, Texas 911 is going to answer that call, which is going to create a huge delay in you being able to get services. So internet protocol calling is a value, it is, but there are some cons to having that if you're not staying on top of updating your information. The same thing if I have a registered laptop that is connected to voice over internet and I'm trying to call 911, it's going to go to my registered center, not where I'm traveling at or currently sitting at when I'm making that call from a laptop device or an iPad, so to speak. So just be aware of that when you're talking about the voice over internet protocol. Then we launch into next generation 911, which is, again, it's a beautiful thing that we have this technology, and 911 centers are trying to catch up to the technology. Because before, you could launch Uber or Lyft, or you could have people to know where you were, but your 911 centers were suffering because we did not have that technology. Now, to date, we are getting that technology through resources like eBodyGuard and other resources that are coming into our call center through applications. But next generation 911 has opened up our funnel a little bit more to receive images, videos, text messaging. It's also allowing us to have a state-to-state connection, so there's redundancy in our systems. And then the applications that are out there on the market that are being able to connect to 911 in those sensitive situations where a person is not feeling comfortable or safe enough to communicate verbally, they have these other applications that they can tap into that will still give them the connection to 911 for getting support and assistance. So what happens when you dial or when you're calling 911? What should you expect when you're doing that? All telecommunicators across the world are trained in 5 questions that we're always going to be asking. We may ask them in a different manner as far as like how we're asking, but it's all boiled down to these 5 W questions. When you're calling 911, the first point of information that we are going to try to obtain from you is your location. Without a location, we don't know where to send any help. Police, fire, medical, we don't know. So the where is always going to be a first question. In our county, in our 911 center, when we answer 911, we're going to identify our county, Franklin County Emergency Communications. What is the location of your emergency? And a lot of the centers have the same policy where they're going to identify their agency, and then they're going to ask you that question, where is your emergency? Because that is the key point, the vital point. If you can't give me anything else, the where is the utmost important part that I'm going to need. The secondary question we're going to ask you is the what. What is happening? Is it a fight? Is it a dispute? Is it a larceny? Is it a missing person? Is it a wreck with personal injury? What is going on? That will help us to determine what services are going to be needed or needed to be provided to you. The third question we're going to ask you is when, because the when is going to help us to prioritize our calls of service. As you can imagine in a 911 center, just like right now, my call floor is kind of busy with traffic. And so we're getting a lot of calls from a wreck that's being reported on one of our major highways. So we can have up to 10, 15 people calling at the same time. And so the when is important because it will help us to filter through calls as they're coming in. If I have a B&E old, something that happened 2 weeks ago or last week, or a family was on vacation and come home and their home has been ransacked and it's not currently in progress, and I have a medical call of service that is CPR in progress, it helps us to know the when and the what so we can prioritize our units and our responses to get to those respective locations. The who is always important because the who is going to be who are you, the caller with whom I'm speaking, and then also who are the people involved in the situation that you may be reporting. Sometimes you may know, sometimes you may not know, and it's okay either way, but we are going to ask. The reason we're asking the who as far as any perpetrators or anyone who is looking to do harm is because we can check our databases to see if there are any outstanding warrants on an individual or if there are any caution indicators of that person. As you can imagine, when you have law enforcement responding to a scene, you want to try to give them as much information as possible for their safety and your safety. So when they're approaching, that they are going to do so in a manner that's going to be able to protect everyone. And so we are going to ask those who questions, not that we're trying to be nosy, it's just that we need that information to better prepare and arm our officers or our responders in what and who they're going to encounter when they get there. The weapons is always a very important question that we will ask on our 911 calls, simply because we need to know what is involved. Now, weapons are around us all the time. Our fists, our hands, our legs, our feet. I mean, we can use weapons in any sense of the word. However, in our definition of weapon, we are looking at guns, knives, machetes, anything that can penetrate an officer's, maybe a vest, or anything that can cause harm without the physical sense. And so we are going to ask that question because that will help prepare our officers and their response to how they're going to be responding to situations. Active shooter. Here in North Carolina, we've already had 2 active shooter situations in the last week in different locations, but they are happening. And so we have to let our officers know what type of firearms are involved, what type of individuals are involved. As much information as we can obtain from callers is what we're sharing with our officers so they can respond and help to keep everyone safe, including themselves. So just to share a little glimpse of the telephone side of 911. So this is the Annie Alley that I was referencing earlier about the alphanumeric, which is the phone number, and the alpha location, which is the address. So I'm using an example from eBodyGuard because that is the application that you're going to be learning most about today. So when I'm launching the app to call 911, it's giving the call taker my name. It's giving the application that is being utilized to make this call. It's given the actual GIS, latitude, longitude, address or location of where I'm calling from. It's also giving them the longitude, the latitude, it's giving them the type of call that's being connected through our wireless connectivity, and it is NENA compliant coming in through our provider. And so this is what an anti-alley screen would look like when using the app or using any type of device, whether it's calling from a landline or calling from your cell phone. It's going to give us information such as the latitude, longitude, and it will give us the caller as the wireless provider, whether it's AT&T, Verizon. So we are going to ask your name still, but in the application databases, it's nice to have that information ahead of time. So even if you could not speak, I would have a name at least and an address and some phone numbers that I can actually do research on to be able to look and find further information. So from that anti-alley, the latitude and longitude is plotting on a map. And so this is a map of that actual phone call where I was inside sitting right where I'm sitting now in my office, and it plotted directly over in this building where I am. And that is how accurate that data was. And we did testing on this, and it worked in 4 counties that we actually tested in. I rode around and we did this, and it was very much accurate every time. So I was very impressed with that, because not often do you get that, but this, I can honestly validate that this works. So in the CAD application side, which is our resource allocation for keeping up with records, we pull the data in from the telephone to our workstations, to our computer systems. And if you notice, it's given me from the address, even if I didn't live in this county and I'm only working here, if I wasn't familiar with the area, it's still telling me based on this data who I'm going to send for what type of complaint this may be. So if it's a medical call, I know what EMS and fire rescue units to send. If it is a fire call, if it's a law enforcement call, or if I need all 3, it's given me that information already. So technology is a wonderful thing, but here is one caution that I will share with you. There are human beings that put this data into these databases. And so if the human being makes an error by transposing a number or a letter, that's what we're going to get. So oftentimes when callers are calling 911, they don't understand why they have to answer so many questions, or why we're asking so many questions. And they're always utilizing, well, can't you see it on your display? Yes, we can. However, people make mistakes, and we want to verify this information so we know every second in an emergency is very valuable, and we want to know that we're sending our resources to where they need to be in a timely manner. If you can imagine, if a city is put in wrong, or if they're transposing those numbers, or streets and avenues, boulevards, I mean, things can happen where mistakes can be made. So when you're calling 911, even with all this data and technology, we're still trained, and we're going to ask you to verify your location so we can ensure we're sending the right people to you in a timely manner. Then with that addressing, I can go into our system and look up previous calls. This will show me all calls from this particular location, whether it's a residence, whether it's a home, business, whether it is a cross street. Anytime we get calls, there's always previous details that we can go into and pull data from. So if we know that there's a history of domestic violence, if we know there's a history of runaway juveniles, if we know there's a history of disputes or fights that happen at this location, this is a running record log of the 911 center to be able to inform officers of their awareness for their approach. Now, again, if you're working with your, your shelter managers, or those that are working in certain communities, I encourage you to reach out to your 911 directors in your respective areas. I have a relationship again with Monica Kearney, and I am sharing reports with her. And as a matter of fact, it's the second, so I'm already a day late in sending those reports. But I do share with her reports for her to be able to keep accountability of knowing what is going on and where in our communities are we hurting the most when it comes to our domestic violence calls of service, our larcenies, our areas in our county that need some like neighborhood input, some community involvement. And that is so helpful in that respect. She's able to get a general area, a general community, a general location, and she can actually work her resources in those areas. So if you don't have partnerships with your 911 directors, I can assist you with that, or you can look at those 2 links that are provided in the chat for being able to connect with your local resources there. In the the call taking, we also have protocols that we have to follow. So if there are police, fire, and medical calls for service, we got to know what to tell people. We have to know what instructions to give people if they're dealing with these types of emergencies. Now, I'm sharing a picture of what we consider a hard set card set, but all of this data is also inside of our computers, where we can not skip a beat by just following the directions on our computers and just tabbing and filling in the blanks with the information you are providing. However, in 911 operations, we have to have redundancy. We have to have a backup to a backup to a backup. So in the event our CAD systems are out of service, or they're doing updates or upgrades, we still have to answer 911 calls of service, and we still have to provide you with instructions to help you to be safe until responders can get to you. And that's what these protocols are. Now, across the country, it may be a different standard of protocol that may be used, but they are protocols that are able to help a telecommunicator to help you during your crisis of emergency. So what happens if you call 911 and you're not able to safely communicate verbally with the call taker? What do you do? In this essence, I'm going to share with you some things, but again, every state may be different in how they provide services to you, but this is the generics. So dial 911 and leave the line open. Whether it's from your cell phone, whether it's from a landline phone, just leave your line open. Leaving the line open will help us to listen and hear background noises that are taking place. Even though you may not be able to communicate directly to me, if there's any way you can verbalize any clues in a conversation with the person or the individuals who you may have problems with, it will help us to identify a little bit more things that are happening and who all may be involved. Location information obtained by the technology. We're always going to be sending law enforcement to all of our open lines, all of our hang-up calls, because we need to know that there's a safe scene in order for medical responders to go if there is a medical emergency identified. Texting to 911. Again, text to 911 is available in a lot of areas, but there may be some small areas that aren't already on text to 911. So if you are trying to text 911 and it's not getting through, that's telling you that that center is not set up to receive text. However, if you do text 911 and you're getting responses, then you know you're communicating with someone who can at least be able to ask questions and get information from you to get the right resources to you. When you're texting 911, again, the where is the most important information for you to text out, and the what. So at least we know where we're going, what you're needing, and what is happening, so we get the right resources to you. Also, our telecommunicators are trained to think outside the box. So there are some times in situations, and I'm sure you may have heard or seen this on the news or maybe on YouTube, where a caller in a domestic violence situation was pretending to order a pizza with a 911 operator. Now, we don't have that in our protocols, but we use common sense with this job, and we have to work within the parameters that we have. But if there was a caller to call and we are hearing them trying to order a pizza or to try to order a cab or get a ride, we know that those might be clues that there may be a dangerous situation evolving. So we're going to go along with you, and we may ask you yes, no questions. And we're trying not to put you in a situation where it's going to be more dangerous for you. So we will take the lead from you based on the information you're providing and play along. And again, we're not having standards of certification on that. It's just common sense awareness that when you're taking calls and you hear distress in a voice or you're hearing background noises, that you know that there's something not right going on with this situation. Also, using emergency SOS is another thing that is available on cell phones. All cell phones have capabilities of emergency SOS. And I know with the application you're about to learn about with eBodyGuard, there is that SOS connectivity for connecting with the 911 call centers. But preparedness is the key. The more you can know about your local area, the more you can build partnerships with those in your area, the more you're going to be able to provide information to victims of domestic violence or any situation that's going on. It's just community public relations and awareness. So I hope this information is helpful to you in the respect that you will reach out to your local resources to learn more. So here's an interesting fact. 911 call centers in the US receive over 240 million calls each year, and 80% of them are from cell phones. Now, this study was done back in 2016, and I'm sure it's increased since then because a lot of people are doing away with landline or home phones, and they're going strictly to cellular devices. And that's a great thing to save money and to have long distance connectivity. However, keep in mind when you're using cell phones that there may be other areas of things that need to happen.
And they're going to chime in here real quick. We are
yes.
at our time. I kind of pushed it into the Q&A section a little bit.
Okay.
So let's go ahead. I'm going to just ask a couple of questions and then I'll save the rest for the end because we've allotted quite a bit of time at the end for questions as well. So the first question I thought was that many people probably have on their mind. What kind of formal training or certifications does a 911 operator actually have? What does it take to become a 911 operator?
Yeah, and the standards or requirements may be different, but just a general answer to that is in our area, you have to be 18 years of age or older. You have to have high school diploma or GED. We are all on the job training and certification. So you're training and learning and being certified on the job. The protocols that I was sharing with you for police, fire, and medical, they have to go to receive those certifications, basic telecommunicator certification for call taking. There's tons of continuing education that a telecommunicator has to maintain every year to retain certifications that they are getting in this work.
Great. And just one other quick question then. And if someone's location services are turned off on their phone, is their information still going to be sent to the dispatcher?
When you're calling 911, yes, it is a default. Like if you turn your location services off, it will keep others from being able to track or find you. But when you're dialing 911, there is a piece in the technology that will allow that service to turn on for 911 connectivity.
Very good. All right. Well, Heather, we'll check back in with you later with some more questions. But right now, I'm going to share my screen and turn things over to Melissa. Just one moment. Let me cue that up. So she's going to share a little bit more about eBodyGuard and give you an in-depth look at the tool and share what they're doing to improve personal safety. So we really encourage everyone to think about how this technology could be used by victims and survivors of abuse. And we're encouraging honest feedback and questions and concerns you may have. While the technology can be used by anyone, eBodyGuard is committed to creating a tool that addresses the unique needs of victims and survivors of abuse. So with that, please join me in welcoming Melissa Faith Hart.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. And so I'm full screen now. You can see me too. Okay, great. So I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about my background. I'm a 3-time survivor of domestic violence, and I did not stay angry, but I did get curious. And so when I had a no file on a sex assault, I decided that I really wanted to understand what the whole criminal justice system was about. And so I embraced law enforcement, I embraced the district attorneys, and I embraced the criminal justice system. And I was lucky enough inside of the world of Xerox, where my corporate job was, to be able to learn business process and learn the understanding of the strategies behind how to solve the right problem and not get all bent out of shape about the fact that I was no filed on. Instead, I said, how can I go and take the burden out of the system of the criminal justice world and go do whatever it takes so that we can help them help victims. So that's how I work. That's how my brain works. And so sometimes businesses spend millions and millions of dollars solving the wrong problem. So with the criminal justice world, as you just heard from Heather, she's brilliant. She's super experienced. We have so many people in the criminal justice world doing a great job every single day. And there's just bottlenecks in the criminal justice world. There's need for automation. There's need for us all to work together. So eBodyGuard, this is my company. I was able to innovate a ton of innovations at Xerox and the Palo Alto Research Center scientists, but I decided, you know what, I want to do this now on my own and really bridge together shelters, the community, and get everybody working together with law enforcement and district attorneys and get everybody talking to each other. And if we can do that, we really might be able to solve this problem, because victims don't understand what's going on the other side with law enforcement. Law enforcement doesn't understand sometimes how the victim world's feeling. And I get that, because no one should ever tell a survivor that they need to leave, because they're the ones that understand their world. Just like the victims and the survivors don't necessarily understand all that is going on the law enforcement side and on the district attorney side. I didn't know that either. And so I just want everyone to know that this is where my heart comes from as I built these things and as I'm building these things and as I'm going and knocking down the doors of law enforcement in the technology world. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay, so with all that said, let's put up the slide deck, Jeff, and what we built. So moving forward to the next slide. Thank you. Yes, the major problem with prosecuting any case today and protecting the chain of custody is that there's conflict between agencies for evidence of the case. And I don't think anyone's going to be shocked when I say this. There's a ton of no files. There's a lot of digital evidence standards, file sizes, discovery violations, increasing storage costs, and then of course they said, it's resulting therefore in evidence that could be useful in a crime, and then they just get thrown out. And that's not helpful to victims or to the defendants. Move forward, please. So what is eBodyGuard? Our mission is that we are the bridge, and we are eBodyGuard, and we're the electronic bodyguard for the criminal justice system. So as we do create these bridges from the community, which is what we have here with the app side that we're going to talk about today, into 911, integrated all the way through every single 911 in the country already, all the way through the court system, we will achieve swift due process safely and securely. And I don't think that if there's an origination of a crime and someone's reporting and it takes 3 or 4 years for that case to go through, that's swift. eBodyGuard is a software as a service. We have 3 modules. We have eBodyGuard Versatile. That's the app. We have eBodyGuard Versatile Highway. That's the brains of the system. That's what goes and grabs the data and all of the documents, the video and the audio, and then it connects it to the eBodyGuard Versatile Vault. That's our CJIS storage, and that's going to be in the cloud. And no, eBodyGuard is not in Canada yet. We have to nail this national approach here in America. Go ahead and move forward. But I am coming to Canada next. And then eBodyGuard's Versatile is this. This is what we have today. So you can download this right now. Go to the App Store and Google Play, and this is for free right now. eBodyGuard can be activated through your voice up to 30 feet away, okay? And this can be used for medical, for fire, and for crime, okay? And then also can be utilized through the touch of this red SOS button. And you will talk to a 911 communicator live. As she showed you on her screen, it has location data, very accurate location data. And then we have an audio and a video recording. And after you talk to the 911 communicator, we will send your GPS location to your loved one. We are FBI CJIS compliant. Next slide, please. Even if you are not able to be in a cell phone area, so if you're in a dead zone, we will get your information to the 911 center. This is super important. So if you're in the mountains or in a dead zone, we will get your information over. So we're not using cell phone tower technology. Go ahead and move forward. And here's what matters. This is our complete end result here with the chain of custody. So if a crime does occur, we will grab the data from the phone. We will grab body cam data too with the officer and connect into that CAD that she showed you, the computer aided dispatch, and send it on to law enforcement for their case review so that then they can work with the district attorney's office and support the entire chain of custody. So this is actually what I do in regards to my entire expertise. So that's what I'm going to talk about at this moment. And now we're going to show you a video.
Denver 911, what is the address of your emergency?
So very nice to see you today. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Absolutely.
So tell me, Andrew, how is it that you even got involved and started in 911 work?
Sure. Well, I've been involved in the public safety arena for about 10 years. Once I finished graduate school, I went to work for the Department of Homeland Security in their dispatch center. My original objective was to transition that into a law enforcement public safety career, but really fell in love with emergency communications. From there, I spent a little bit of time in the private sector working in healthcare security operations. And about a year ago, the opportunity arose for me to join Denver 911, get back into public service and working for the city. And it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
That's great. I want to ask just a little bit more of a salient question and get underneath the why. So what drove you to the public safety world and the personal safety world of being the rescuer?
Sure. I think it came in college when I was trying to identify what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had a hard time picturing myself doing any specific job. However, serving a purpose was something that I could identify with. And so a career, no matter what it was, within public safety, helping people, protecting folks in a way that they can't protect themselves, kind of a mission was something that I was definitely drawn to.
Well, we really certainly appreciate that. We need more people that are mission focused, purpose focused like this, especially today in this country. So now parlaying into what it takes to do your job. The data that it takes to achieve being able to support people today. Why is clear, accurate data important to both 911 and to law enforcement?
Sure. Really, it's important because the location data that we receive here at 911 is the foundation for everything that we do. Our job is to receive a call for help, whether it's a medical emergency, a safety emergency, a fire, and assess the situation and send the right help to the right person at the right time. And having clear and accurate information about what's going on is the most important piece of that puzzle. So the more accurate the location data is, the faster we can get help to that location. The more information and data we have about the situation that may be unfolding, the more equipped, I should say, the more well-equipped the responders are to assess the situation and resolve it peaceably.
Understood. And we are about to launch a regional pilot here in Colorado that talks to that situational awareness, providing more layers of data. Now, those layers of data will only be as accurate as the community provides. Speak to me about the relationship between community and 911 and the law enforcement and the ability for you all to verify the data that's coming in.
Sure.
Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Sure. We've seen a pretty significant increase in the number of automated sources of calls for emergency services.
Okay.
Everything from wearable devices to smartphone apps to sensors built into your car. There's OnStar. There's now a public safety partnership with SiriusXM, where if you get into an accident, the sensor data that is a part of your vehicle is being transmitted to 911.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to receive that information in such a way that it is, we know it's accurate and we know it's actionable. And so it's very important that whenever any vendor in the kind of the public safety technology space is developing anything, they work with emergency communications, they work with law enforcement to ensure that the technology is accurate and actionable for the personnel who are going to be answering those calls for help.
So by working with 911, by working with law enforcement, it's not just about, oh, look at my new shiny toy. It's also about understanding the processes that are driven in the systems that you currently have inside of 911, that law enforcement have, that will help to enable to do your jobs better so that you can actually really actionize that call, that you can respond when they need help.
That's
as quick as possible.
Yes.
And then from a downstream perspective, that if they are a victim or they do need emergency help from an EMS perspective, that you're there and you can provide that action the moment they need help.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
That's our objective in every scenario.
Thank you. And I hope that you were able to gain some important understanding around between Heather and the Denver 911 executive director, the need to share information with the law enforcement. There's a shift in what's happening at the 911 centers about all the kinds of automated tools. And obviously this is a new application that is being provided to the community now. But the eBodyGuard app that you're able to download today is going to be different from the eBodyGuard app that I'm about to show you that we're offering here in the next few weeks. I'm not going to put it up on the wireframe here, but in the next 2 minutes, I'm about to speak to that. But salient data, layers of data that we're going to talk to in the next few minutes are going to be super important, because what Heather spoke to was they ask where, what, when, who, and weapons. But what if someone's not able to speak? What if that victim at the moment is literally at gunpoint or has no capability except to text to 911 and they're in a precarious situation? So I thought to myself, what if I'm able to provide the capability to a domestic violence victim who has been through multiple events in their life, or is in a situation where in the relationship and they're in the cycle of abuse, okay? And they have the forethought and the foreknowledge to fill out the app and to share with us beforehand, you know, if I share this information now and my life were to be taken, or I was to somehow have the need to call 911, maybe, just maybe, I might share enough information with the technology that my life either A, might be saved, or B, that if something did happen to me, at least they'll have the right data. So that's what my thoughts were as I was creating the app. And so as I share this level of information now, that's what I want you to think of. Okay, go ahead, Jeff. So here's the screen. And by the way, it's already built. I'm going to show you. I have a glare though. I'll do that after. So sometimes I'm afraid of is coming out in the next few weeks. The female or male will fill out first name, last name of the person they're afraid of, their phone number, the relationship of how they're connected to this person, the gender, height, hair, and race. The law enforcement are asking if the person has tattoos. They want their date of birth, their weight, and their eye color. We are asking for you to place their vehicle, and we need their make and their model and the color of the vehicle and the license plate number and the state. Please do upload a photo if we are able to get that, and we have that ready to go. Now, we also have protection order capability, and we're going to go ahead and ask you to upload that protection order. And we are going to add a place in here for an expiration date, because those do expire. And when you have the capability to answer the mental health questions, not because we're trying to, not support you in regards to mental health. We're actually asking that because we want to see if you need to call the National Suicide Hotline. There's a lot of correlation between domestic violence and mental health. In fact, 50% of the victims of domestic violence need support around PTSD. After my sex assault, I experienced PTSD for 6 months. And so we have a screen of the National Suicide Hotline, the National Domestic Violence Hotline here, and we also have the access to the domesticshelters.org as well. Next slide, please. Medical conditions. We have this in here because we want to make sure that we're supporting everyone in all aspects. We also have vehicles here. Some people may use this app for other reasons outside of domestic violence. We know that there's going to be multiple use cases, so we are in definite need to make sure that we're supporting multiple use cases. So if someone has a DV situation and they also have, multiple other things going on with their life, like I, being a former survivor of domestic violence, I have a brain condition, so I want to put that in there. I also have feet issues, so I might also want to let them know that, but I need to definitely let them know that I'm on that I have brain medication that I take. So I'm going to put that in there as well. And then my vehicles. Okay, back up. Okay, we do let everyone know in our EULA that they are engaging with 911, that they are going to give this information to law enforcement, that if they do push the red SOS button, that this safety card data will be transferred to law enforcement, because that is the reason that we're utilizing this particular red SOS button. So I am making this portion of the app for domestic violence victims. This area right here is for the victims. That's it. I have other aspects of the app for other use cases, but this right here is so that people can text to 911, and that if they're in that precarious situation, they can be supported by law enforcement and have the ability to just text back and forth, and that actually the 911 center will know that they're a domestic violence victim, because the code DVA means domestic violence, and it will come across their screen just like that. Okay, I'm set. If you have any questions for me, I'm going to open it up now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. So we have a lot of questions that came in. So let me go ahead and run through these. The first one, so you mentioned that, so when you're using the eBodyGuard app, you say eBodyGuard now, it will signal 911. Will it signal a 911 call even without service, although it's locked? If you don't have the PIN code, is it going to work without that?
Okay, you're asking me two questions.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
If you don't have the PIN code, meaning that the ability to disenable your code, or what do you mean by the PIN
Yeah,
code?
so on your phone, if it's locked in the lock screen and you don't maybe have the PIN code to get in, are you still able to say the phrase?
So if your phone is shut like this, you are able to say I don't want to say, you are able to say eBodyGuard now, and it will call 911.
Perfect. And then if you don't have signal, I know the answer to this because you've shared this with me as well. It tracks off of the GPS, not wireless towers, correct?
Correct. If you don't have signal, you will get your data through, but you will not speak to a live 911 telecommunicator. I want to be clear about that.
Great to know. And then as far as this technology, obviously you can go to the App Store and download this app right now. You've kind of shared with us that there are some new areas of the app that are kind of coming in the upcoming weeks. But as far as right now, the technology that exists, are there certain states where this is available, or is this available anywhere in the US?
Anywhere in the US, you can download the app at the App Store and Google Play today. In the first portion, I covered what's available. This next piece, all the data that we are adding, that is currently going to be tested here in the Colorado market first, working with law enforcement and the district attorneys, because it's a lot of data. Okay. I want to make sure that they're going to have our back and that they're going to go with us. And then as soon as I have that and I get the thumbs up that I'm good with that, because I want to, make sure that that's good, then I'm going to come to other states.
That's fantastic. So, Nancy mentioned she's got it on her phone right now. That's great to see.
Great.
So if a victim changes the perpetrator because they got out of one relationship and moved to the next one, and unfortunately turned into a domestic violence situation, can they update this information at any time or add in additional people?
Yeah, you can add as many abusers as you want. Let's take them all down.
Love it. I love it. And let's see, any other questions here? So you mentioned other use cases. So can this app be used for medical emergencies only if you don't have a domestic violence kind of situation?
Yeah, they can be for medical as well. Yes.
Great.
And I've been noticing some people that have been dealing with people that are in the medical world criminal justice world and have abusers in those situations, if they could contact me separately, I can actually help you in that situation.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Great. A question from Harmony is this information entered into the app obtainable by defense attorneys? Where does that information go beyond the 911 dispatch?
Thanks. That's a great question. The app information stays within your purview only. It only goes to law enforcement, okay, if you have a crime occur, all right? And that's discoverable to the district attorney's office. If that crime occurs, all discoverable information goes on to the PD, to the public defender, right? But your app, your information stays with you. Did I address the question?
Yeah, that's very helpful to know. Is there any variance in how 911 would respond if you use the eBodyGuard app or if you were to dial 911? So more so the question about speed of response.
Yes, there is a variance. So there's a variance in two aspects. There's a variance on the 911 side because every 911 responds differently. Okay. And then there's a variance to you just dialing 911 from your phone versus if you use the app itself. Okay. So obviously, if you pick up your phone and you directly dial 911, you have your own features and benefits that come with just directly dialing 911. Then you have your features and benefits that come with utilizing this app.
Let's see. Will this app be available in different languages? Is that something that you're looking towards to the future?
That's such a wonderful question. I think that's a wonderful question. Yes, in the next year, we have located the technology that we're going to integrate with that will have over 200 languages. So yes, wow, what a wonderful question.
That's awesome. And Alexander was asking, so what is the expected timeline for rollouts into other states? Obviously, working with you directly, know that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to kind of make sure that communication's there and that information, it gets into the right hands. So timeline, but then also what can advocates do to kind of advocate for this implementation in their community? So 2 questions there.
It's a great question. So each state has a different timeline. And if you want to know where you're at, you have to contact us. So please do reach out. And I think you're going to give our contact information.
Yes, I'll give everyone that information at the end here. Let's see. I'm trying to read these quickly and make sure that I'm getting to as many, but there's a lot here. Let's see. Here's a question, and maybe may or not be able to answer. So someone that lives in Maine, they're on the Canadian border. And so sometimes the Canadian 911 system will pick up. Is that a case that you can kind of guide whether or not you'll be able to help? I assume that if the Canadian 911 tower picks up, they probably will not be able to get that information.
Okay, so you're dealing with a GPS situation, and we will have to understand what technology that you're even utilizing to have that Canadian pickup. So as long as you are standing in Maine, literally, if you're in Maine, then you should be having your Maine 911 authority pick up. Okay. So if you're in Canada, then I mean, that's what I know because of the GPS FCC jurisdictional boundaries.
Right. Okay. Good to know.
That's what I know right now. I'd
right.
Have to
Yeah.
talk to you specifically. You have to talk to you, that person that is Canadian, Maine, whatever's going on in that boundary. I'd have to talk to you.
Well,
so reach out to me.
Encourage them to reach out. We'll share that email address here shortly. Are there any special considerations related to the statute of limitations and discovery?
In regards to what?
So I was hoping those terms would kind of pique your understanding.
I understand statute of limitation. Yeah. I understand discovery. I understand that there's different statute of limitation for sexual assault, and every single state has different statute of limitation for every single crime. So
yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of variation.
Are you asking me how long we're going to hold the retention in the storage in the cloud? I mean, what's the specific question? You're going to have to get more specific.
Yeah, let's answer it from that standpoint. How long will that information be held on to?
That's going to be also contingent to the district attorneys
Okay.
in each state and each law in each state.
Very good. Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot of variation between areas, which makes your job so much harder to get this implemented.
Oh, we got a simple job over here.
Right.
You
right,
guys
exactly.
do the hard job. You
There
guys
it
work
is.
with the victims. Yes.
And so let's go ahead. I'll cycle through these questions a little bit more at the end, but we're going to turn it over here shortly we're going to turn over to Rita Smith. And what she's going to do is she's going to talk about, how this can be helpful for advocates, and, kind of just give her perspective on things. Rita is our Vice President of External Relations. She is an internationally recognized domestic violence expert. So Rita, welcome, and look forward to hear what you have to share.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Melissa. Thank you, Heather. And thank you to the hundreds of advocates on this call who do this work every day, survivors who have joined us. You all made me better educated, better prepared to do this work. So thank you. I want to start with that piece. This technology, I think, has the capacity to help us send responders to situations better informed, better able to make effective responses. When Heather was talking about all the questions that get asked, that's really to try to give a real-time assessment of what's happening in the situation. By filling out the eBodyGuard information prior, when you're not in crisis, when you've got a time to think about all the ways that you might be in danger, all the ways that someone who came to respond might be in danger. For instance, whether there's access to a gun. Those things will go automatically to the dispatcher right away. And so those questions, while they may ask them again, if they're not able to talk to you directly, they've got the information in front of them right away. So they can really inform the people responding on the ground to here's what the situation is. There's an active restraining order. There have been 3 calls made to this residence in prior years. So they really can start to give people a sense of what they're going to face before they even get to the door. And I think that's really helpful and critical, not just to the people on the other side of the door, but to law enforcement or responders who are coming. Because our goal has always been in this work to make our communities safer. And to make our communities safer, we have to reduce the violence. So this technology really allows us to give another tool to both parties, the person who's in danger and the people who are trying to help, a way to reduce that violence and to get people to safety. So that's kind of where I am with this. I'm always looking for opportunities to help, and not just advocates, but survivors and law enforcement, a way to really respond in a more effective manner, and for us to have real success, saving lives. That's really what the goal is. So I will stop there, other than just saying that, if you have this technology and your law enforcement agency is using this technology, it starts to take out some of the criteria for making sure that law enforcement is always trained, always up to speed, always aware of what the information might be best known is to respond to a call, because they're going to have access to this information. And even if they're not aware they need it, they're going to get it from the dispatcher. So I think what that does is really start to undercut some of the need for constant ongoing training, and making sure that the law enforcement agency you're working with as advocates is getting real-time training, because the things that we think are lethality factors, increased violence factors, are built into this system and built into this technology, so that they're going to get that information whether they're aware they need it or not. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Rita. That's really helpful perspective on kind of how this all ties in together. So next, what I want to do is, in addition to kind of wrapping up with questions, we have about 20 minutes left. I have a few poll questions that I'm going to launch. And this was something that, Melissa had put together just to kind of gauge, from your perspective, what, kind of what you're thinking so far. So let me go ahead and hit launch this. So the first question is, how easy does the eBodyGuard app look to use on a scale of 1 to 10, just based on what Melissa was able to share with you today? 1 being that it seems kind of hard to use, and 10 being that it seems easy to use. So all these questions are going to be launched at once, so feel free to go through them at your own pace. We'll take about 60 seconds or so to go through them. The next question is, how likely are you to suggest to survivors or victims to utilize the eBodyGuard app based on kind of what you've learned today? 1 being not very likely, 10 being very likely. And then the last question that we'll ask is, how comfortable do you think that survivors and victims are going to feel filling out that piece of the puzzle that Melissa shared, the "sometimes I'm afraid of" screen? So that screen that they would add in, information about the people that they fear in their life, people that they know of that could potentially harm them. So 1 is not very comfortable at all, and 10 being very comfortable. So we'll take a few more moments here so that we can get some great feedback here on these questions. But it's just helpful for Melissa and her team to kind of gauge, what your initial thoughts are on the app, because this is really important. One of the reasons why we've decided to partner with eBodyGuard is because they're so responsive, and they truly care about making sure that this app works for victims and survivors of abuse. It's unfortunately a large percentage of the calls that come in for help, and so they want to make sure that it's the right information and provides the right kind of help. So we're at only about 39%. Let's see if we can get up to at least 50% here with responses. Again, just trying to kind of gauge some feedback here on everyone's take on what Melissa shared so far about eBodyGuard. All right, let's go ahead and end the poll, and we'll review the information and results together. So let me share those results with you. So as you can see, when it comes to how easy does the eBodyGuard app look to use, kind of on the easier to use side, which is great to see. I know that it's, just kind of seeing some wireframes and seeing some photos of what the app looks like. I encourage you to play around with it as well yourself. But that's really, really great to hear as well. And then as far as how likely are you to suggest the app, it looks like the majority are on the more likely than not side, which is great to see. And looking here, how comfortable do you think that victims and survivors would feel filling out that "sometimes you're afraid"? Seeing kind of most of the answers being about a 5, so kind of in the middle. So that's good for us to understand as well. Great. Melissa, if you have any feedback on that, welcome that. Otherwise, I'll kind of toss it back over to questions. Encourage Rita and Heather and Melissa to join us again. So I'll go through these questions.
I've been trying to answer some of the chat questions.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, but if you just want to see any of the questions that you have.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to kind of read through them, and I'll ask the questions as they come in. So one that's kind of sitting here for a while is from Jeff Wilkes. Melissa, in your research with police and prosecutors for information, was legal justification for use of force discussed? Many agencies, including police, are hesitant to educate victims about their legal rights to defend themselves. So many clients I have spoken with have been told by their abusers that if they fight back, that they'll be charged too. So maybe less connected to the technology itself, but with your background in criminal justice, are you able to shed any light on that?
Is he specifically speaking about my crime from 22 years ago?
That I do not know. I think it's more so your relationship with police and prosecutors and kind of your research into this app. Are you finding that there's any hesitancy from police to kind of give victims and survivors kind of the right information about how they can react to an abuser? Because I think there's some misinformation there that they feel as though, if they fight back, then they're going to be charged too. Is that conversation come up at all as far as the use of force and how that?
No, not really. In fact, I will say, when you say fight back, it's hard to have.
It's hard. Yeah, I know, because I'm trying to interpret the question.
When
Jeff,
you say
anything
back, maybe if Jeff could clarify, is he saying fight back like as in at the actual time of the impact of that scene, if they're fighting back with their perpetrator and they actually hit them back, then they could also be charged. That's true. They will be charged.
It's good to understand.
I need to, because then they're actually assaulting as well. I need to understand though, if that's what he meant.
Great, Jeff, if you're still on, feel free to enter in additional information in the Q&A. Otherwise, we're just going to continue down the line of questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So one person, and this is more of a feedback, and we'll share feedback as well. So mentioned that promoting the app and this new technology, but concern about, how proactive victims are going to be in making sure that this is downloaded. And I think that's something that, that advocates can help with, to get, people, once they kind of make known that they're concerned about someone in their life, that they can kind of, guide them through that process and let them know that they have that in their tool chest. So just making sure that you're aware of the fact that some victims may not be able to be proactive about this. And so, yeah, just kind of sharing that from our anonymous attendee shared that.
Yeah, we are working on hiding the app on the next iteration. And there's going to be a way to go into settings and then choose to have it look like another app. So it'll look like a waterfall and a wellness app kind of thing. And I know that there are abusers out there, and Rita and I go back and forth, and she's like, well, abusers think like this. And I'm like, oh my God. She makes me crazy. Right. And then I was talking to Midway House over in Indiana, and appreciate you guys, appreciate all of you shelters as you educate me. And thank you, by the way, for continuing to educate me. Like Rita said, it's just crazy how abusers think, So I want you to know, as I keep thinking through the tech, I will find a way we will find a way to outthink those guys, those people, and women.
Step in. Absolutely.
And women. So yeah. So we are going to hide the app first, and then we're going to get smarter as we continue. Keep going.
Fantastic.
Rita, do you want to say anything to that?
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you got to come on mute.
Sorry about that. No, I don't have anything particular to add to that, only that I have just tried to ask you questions about, well, what will happen if this happens, or what will happen if they're not able to receive a call back from 911? Is there a way to put in a text option, for instance? And so you've been very flexible, and that's really helpful. But I've seen a couple times a question come up, Ashley, that I want to make sure Melissa answers. A couple times I've seen a question come up about, are you selling your information to anyone outside law enforcement?
I'm not allowed. It's against FBIC policy. I'm not, trust me. This is also, some people are like, this is a passion project for you, isn't it? I'm like, yep. No, I'm not allowed to sell it.
That's good to understand. Thanks for bringing that up, Rita.
I want to address a question. So this app is objective. The technology itself will tell the truth no matter what happens. So we need to be very clear about that. So if a victim or a survivor or whoever's using this technology, this starts to record. Okay. So this doesn't get tricked.
That's great to know.
Okay, keep going.
All right. So you mentioned masking the app. So another questions that have come up is, what if, the abuser finds the app? That's certainly a concern that you're aware of. And by masking the app, the hope is that can at least be one level of defense against, abuser kind of finding the app on the phone.
Ashley, also, if I can just reiterate on the hiding of the app, that is capable now. Even with Apple and Android, you can actually go to your settings and, or you can just Google, hiding apps in Android, hiding apps in iPhone or whatever. But there are ways that you can hide your apps. Now, as far as a search tool, like I know with iPhones, you can go in and search your apps. In order for you to hide it from that location, you have to go in the App Store and hide it from your purchase list. So even though it's not a cost to this, you're still purchasing through the App Store to download this on your device. So there are ways to hide the app, even though Melissa's working on other ways to also include that in her package as well. But that currently exists now that they can do that.
Very helpful to understand. So you mentioned, let's see, you kind of answered that question, but the idea that the text messaging features is coming through on the app. And then obviously, actually, Heather, one question I had that I wasn't able to answer earlier, and you may have actually answered it in the Q&A, but important for everyone to understand, what is the best way for people to understand if they have text to 911 in their area? How can they find that out without, sending a test text and feeling as though they're kind of
please
burdening?
don't do that. Please don't do that.
test.
What you can do is just Google or look up your local law enforcement agency for your area and contact their non-emergency number. That's the quickest and easiest way to do it. The link that I provided for Nina and APCO, you can also look at the PSAP registries, and they have listings there to indicate if they are receiving text services. It's a hit and miss across the country. There's a lot of states that have it, but there are a lot of rural counties specifically that may not have it. So to be on the safe side, you want to contact non-emergency for your local law enforcement areas and just verify it with them. That's the quickest, easiest way to do it.
Great. So contacting, like I said, your non-emergency phone number for the police department. Very good.
So someone just said they're not clear on when they can encourage clients to begin using this technology. There is already the app in the App Store and Google Play, and you can use this technology today. Okay. Then we are going to layer in the next iteration, meaning we will provide more features coming out very soon. And that is how technology works, where you keep seeing it layered in. And so go ahead and just download the app right now, because it's just going to get more feature rich. Hopefully that was clear.
No, that's very helpful, because I think it's important to understand that there's still relationships being built specifically with dispatch centers to really kind of help them use the technology as best as possible. There's more information that's going to be more robust information that's going to be coming down the pipeline. But right now, I have it on my phone. I know everyone here has it on their phone. You can use the app right now, and it will help you, and it will, connect you with a dispatcher.
Especially if you have a certain person that is in a cycle of abuse, and they could potentially be threatened, and they're someone that might be able to get out, and is that person, they could download the app, and we could have a recorded audio of that, and it could help them today, right now.
Yeah, and I was going to piggyback off of that right quick, Ashley, because I know people were referencing in the notes about, Smart 911 and all these other applications that can do similar. Every app is different, and like Melissa said earlier, the variances are different depending on what tool you're utilizing. So the E-Bodyguard application, what I was so most impressed with is oftentimes when law enforcement gets on the scene of a crime, they hear his side, her side, or one side, the other side, and the truth is lost in the middle. This application is actually giving them real-time information they can tap into and hear what was actually taking place, or maybe even see what's actually taking place, to be able to pursue this matter in a different realm. So every app does have its preferences of pros and cons, but this is the one that stands out the most, with having evidence collected on the scene real time to be able to provide that information to law enforcement.
Very helpful. Everyone, I think we've hit most of the most asked questions. So really, if anyone has any kind of parting words, Melissa, Rita, or Heather, encourage you to share any kind of final thoughts before we wrap things up. Melissa, anything?
Just from the legality perspective, getting that computer-aided dispatch, for discovery can be cumbersome for the victim. And now they have it on their actual phone, and they may have a few seconds actually, even before they get to the CAD from our side. That's vital evidence. So that's very helpful. Secondly, we're a legal call into 911 based upon the technology that we've built up. And we have multiple demographics that have tested this app.
Great to know. All right.
And Ashley, I know we weren't able to answer a lot. There's a lot of questions still coming in, by the way. Is there a way that we can get an email listing of these questions and kind of go through them and give closure to everyone who is asking a question? I don't want anyone to feel like they're not being heard or that we're not responding.
I appreciate that. That's what we like to do. We'll download all of these question and answers. One, because there's some really great feedback in there too. I know Melissa will appreciate seeing, but we'll make sure that we've answered all the questions. It's kind of hard to keep up with these. They kind of get lost in the shuffle, but I'll put those in a document and we'll work together to make sure that all the questions are answered, and we'll include that in the shared resources folder for everyone. So if your question wasn't answered, or you thought of a question afterwards, let's refer there first. We'll see. We'll try to get the questions answered there as best as possible. So great. Well, with that, let's go ahead and we'll wrap up. So thank you again to Melissa and Rita and Heather and everyone who's helped us out today as well. And thank you to everyone who joined us. So we hope that you learned something new today that will be able to help you to better serve victims and survivors of domestic violence. To learn more about domestic violence safety protocols, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that way you can see contact information for Jeff Ruiz, who's on the eBodyGuard team. So he is your point of contact. If you have any questions, you want to go over the DV safety protocols, or if you'd like to discuss, how to initiate a law enforcement partnership in your community, again, you can reach out to Jeff. So jeff.ruiz@ebodyguard.org, and they'd be more than happy to assist with that. So, and just a quick reminder that the webinar recording, transcript, certificate of attendance, any links and resources that were referenced today will be sent out to everyone in attendance within a week of the presentation. And if you're a call-in listener, please send us an email at info@domesticshelters.org, and we will make sure that you receive those materials. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude today's presentation. Thank you, everyone, and take care.